ceasefire talks are slated to begin tomorrow in Doha, but today Hamas said it will not send negotiators. For some analysis now, I'm joined by Natasha Lindstaedt from the University of Essex, who's recently written an article about ceasefire efforts and how the killing of the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh might complicate efforts to secure that deal. Welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, why do you think Hamas has confirmed it won't be attending those talks in Qatar?
I think this recent development has to do with Israel bringing further conditions for the agreement that they had not brought up in the past, and this has to do with Israel wanting to control the corridor between Gaza and Egypt, and also wanting further screenings for Gazans that want to return to their homes. These were stipulations that had not been part of the initial agreement, but they're being brought up now by Netanyahu, who either just due to his own personal preference or due to the pressure coming from the extreme right in his cabinet, don't want to agree to some sort of ceasefire. And we're seeing that it's going to be even more difficult to come to an agreement with the recent assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, who by Hamas standards would have been considered a pragmatist and was probably trying to find some sort of ceasefire or deal to address, of course, the horrendous humanitarian crisis that has unfolded there.
Right, and talking about the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, a number of Iranian officials have said the only way to prevent a direct Iranian response and attack effectively on Israel in retaliation for the killing of Haniyeh is to secure a ceasefire deal for Gaza. So surely it's in Israel's interest now to make sure a deal gets done.
You would think, but they have not been doing what would need to happen for a ceasefire to take place. If they were in fact responsible for the killing of Haniyeh, one of the more pragmatic members, of Hamas, then that was going to be a factor that would undermine any kind of deal from taking place, and in fact would lead to Iran getting more directly involved. I mean, that was one of the things that Iran had told Hamas, that if we are not warned before an attack takes place, and they were not warned about the October attack, that they wouldn't get involved. Now it seems like they're being pressured to get involved and to create more of a regional conflict, which of course is going to lead to a lot more instability. So there's questions about what direction Israel wants to move the conflict in, and does this benefit Netanyahu because it distracts from the domestic problems that he was struggling with prior to the conflict unfolding.
And based on what you're saying, it really doesn't seem that there's much momentum going into these truce talks tomorrow in Doha. And so compounding that, the American Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, reportedly has postponed a trip to the Middle East that was supposed to be this week. Look, what do you think Washington's strategy now is? Why is Blinken apparently not attending the talks himself or not going to the region?
So the U.S. is in an incredibly difficult spot. They're pressuring for a ceasefire, of course, but they have also been warning that Iran could attack, that an attack could be imminent to avenge what happened on their own soil with the assassination of Haniyeh. So I think there's caution about what Iran is going to do next. Now, Iran also doesn't have a lot of different options, because if they respond with too much force, that, of course, will get Israel involved, and Israel tends to respond with a preponderance of force. Much of the Iranian public would not want to be involved in any kind of conflict, larger conflict with Israel at a time when their economy is in tatters, and when they need economic relief, and to not be involved in a war. You're also dealing with Iran's uncertainty over what its cabinet is going to be, and having a new president, Masoud Pezeshkian. So I think because there's all this uncertainty about what Iran is going to do, there'll have to be a pause from the U.S. standpoint until there's a little bit more clarity about how Iran is going to respond.
Do you have any sense of the potential timing here, when we might see, if we might see a response from Iran?
It's difficult to say because Iran actually benefits from this psychological warfare because they're not as strong as the Israelis are. So they almost benefit by keeping the enemy, so to speak, in suspense, in not knowing what's going to happen. Iran has tended to not respond with a lot of force. If you look what happened when there was an attack on the Iranian embassy in Syria, they responded by sending 300 drone missiles that were, of course, shot down by the Israelis. When the U.S. killed General Soleimani, they responded by attacking U.S. troops in Iraq, but no U.S. troops died. So I wonder if they're not going to respond at all or allow a proxy to respond, and the most likely proxy would be Hezbollah.
Natasha Lindstaedt, great to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.